Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Okie dokie. First things first. Today, Green Bay Packers' first preseason game of the season. Everybody's got their own official start date. As I said, for me, it's the first day back from the dead period. Other people, maybe it's, the first day of training camp, first day of pads are on. I'm guessing first day of preseason is a big one for a lot of people as well. And then the main big one being the start of the regular season. But this is a big one. So welcome to anybody that's rejoined us. It's good to have you. So I was trying to think which direction to go here, and I think I'm just going to keep it generic. I'm going to do the whole generic thing, the 10 things to watch for or whatever nonsense. I'm not doing an exact 10 list. That's unnecessary amount of work. It is what it is. I'm going to go through the list until I run out of time, and then we're done, I think. We'll see. Never know. But that is the plan for today. Just kind of, I don't know. I don't really want to label it because I don't want to pigeonhole myself here. Something along the lines of what I'm going to be watching. Worth noting, we will, and when I say we, I mean Cullen and I, my son and I, will be doing a live stream. I've already promised him that, so there's no backing out now. We're going to do that on Patreon. That's what we've been doing. So if you are a Patreon supporter, even for as little as $1 a month, I would encourage you, please come hang out with us. It's always a lot of fun to hang out and do the first Packer game of the season. Look forward to seeing you there. All right. Some housekeeping stuff. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the Aaron Rodgers press conference. I saw a couple of the responses, and none of them were massively interesting. So I'm going to assume that's the most of it, and we'll just kind of leave that alone for today. I'll go back and check it out maybe another time and see if there's anything worth noting. It looks like Week 5 will be against the Chicago Bears is when the Green Bay Packers will wear their rivalry's uniform. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. I'm pretty excited about it. I thought they knocked it out of the park with the throwback leather helmet thing. That's what I was hoping and praying for, and we got it, and I was excited. I'm hoping that they do something awesome for this. They've been hyping it like crazy. Been several different ideas. Most of them are absolutely ridiculous, and I kind of think people are dead serious about their recommendations, and who knows, maybe they're right. But anywho, that is going to be Week 5. I hate to miss something, but I don't think there's really anything else massive that we have to cover. I guess we can talk about it on the live stream if that's what you'd like to do. So why don't we just dive into this? These are just kind of the things to, keep an eye on for the game or something. Let's start with the low-hanging fruit that is also not the Packers. And that is this is not just Packers versus Rodgers, which is interesting enough, but we've already done that. It's also not massively interesting because it's not, what everybody's lamenting, including Rodgers, that this game wasn't in Lambeau. Rodgers kind of wanted that last opportunity to come into Lambeau and whatever, and I'm sure he would have gotten a great farewell and all that stuff. I also think any narrative around, and I know I kind of played into this jokingly about, Matt LaFleur getting all his starters up because Rodgers was playing and he didn't want to get showed up. And who knows, maybe there's an ego thing there. I don't really know. I would assume not, but who knows. But certainly any kind of like Rodgers versus Love narrative is kind of dumb because there's clearly no animosity there. Those two are friends. This is not a genuine competition. It's a preseason game. So I think if I'm interested in anything, and each one of those maybe has its own semi-interesting dynamic, I think the most interesting thing is actually the fact that this is the first game we get to watch that has McCarthy and Rodgers back together. And the biggest question I have in the back of my mind is there going to be some kind of a nostalgic thing that happens when they line up and they start playing, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm in 2014 all over again. Like, oh, I remember this. Because here's the thing. The odds that they're actually going to get back together, knowing both of them, especially Rodgers, the odds they're going to get back together, and the thought is going to be, hey, let's try to run something new and innovative. Yeah, right. Yeah, frickin' right. First of all, Rodgers, never. But Rodgers has been everywhere he goes trying to re-implement the McCarthy system. He wants the Mike McCarthy offense, the old Mike McCarthy offense. Now, Mike has probably moved off of that a little bit, but you know what? Does he frickin' care? He doesn't care. He's got Aaron Rodgers for 1 year, and he's going to try to relive the old magic. He's going to give Rodgers the best possible tools he can because nobody understands the Rodgers-Mike McCarthy offense better than Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. So, yeah, they're going to try to rebuild the old Rodgers-Mike McCarthy offense. Now, maybe Rodgers will allow Mike to throw in a couple wrinkles here and again, but I'm guessing he's going to put a leash on that pretty tight. And there's going to be a whole lot of Mike McCarthy just helping support Rodgers as he runs the offense that he wants to run. And again, there isn't going to have to be a whole lot of explaining. Rodgers doesn't have to bring in his own offensive coordinator and try to teach all the coaches and teach all the players and everything. This is second year in Pittsburgh, and Mike McCarthy is going to come in and have every understanding. I mean, not only just because he's had so much time with Rodgers, but he really is a brilliant offensive mind that's been around forever. I mean, he was a hot shot offensive guy back in the early 90s with the 49ers. I mean, he is, I'm kind of making this up because I'm not sure the exact timeline, but just to put it in a flashy way, he was like the Ben Johnson of 2001. And he was around a long time before that, but I think that was around the time, he started getting some recognition. 2005, I think, is when he got his offense. Oh, no, he was offensive coordinator before that, it looks like. But 36 years old, he's young, hotshot offensive coordinator. But anyway, all that aside, part of me wants to sit down and maybe watch a couple games just to kind of get reacclimated, just to make sure I know it when I see it. But the other part of me is I just want to sit here, and I know it's preseason, so everything's kind of vanilla, but it would just be awesome to sit down and just go, oh, that's it. There's the old Packers offense. I recognize that. I doubt it'll happen, but it would be cool. Kind of like how nostalgia hits you where you hear that song and it just hits you in a certain, where it's just like, oh, geez. Or that smell like a perfume that was from the 90s. Or the Brute aftershave, that you haven't smelled since your grandpa wore it in 96. Brute aftershave and cigarettes. That's the good stuff, man, I'm telling you. So that's number one. The reuniting, the back together again of Rodgers and McCarthy. I just want to see it, Now, I will put the caveat in that we don't really know anything. There may be no starters that play tomorrow on either team because both McCarthy has not made a final decision, and Matt LaFleur has explicitly said he reserves the right to essentially change his mind. So, yeah, the starters are going to play, but I might get scared, cold feet last minute, or, guys are complaining about the temperature, or they're cramping up or whatever, and he just gets cold feet and is like, screw this, just put the backups in, I don't care. But this is all kind of assuming that the plan stays in place, that there will be starters on both sides. And I really hope that there are. Give Rodgers a drive, Next up, I think somewhat of an underrated storyline here might be how Tyrod Taylor plays. I'm not really worried about Jordan Love other than staying healthy, but there is a question about what happens if and when Jordan Love goes out for a series, goes out for a game, goes out for a couple games. As I've said numerous times now, he does tend to miss a couple games a season. And we had it pretty good when we had Malik. Tyrod Taylor is not Malik Willis. In fact, nobody is going to be Malik Willis because, again, when you look at the grades and whatnot, Malik Willis was actually like the best quarterback in the entire NFL. He was ungodly good. The stats don't even make sense. So we're going to need Tyrod Taylor to be able to handle himself. It'll be kind of interesting, actually, to see what Matt LaFleur is going to do with him, because I think I don't know, but I think he's going to be a little bit more of a traditional quarterback than what you had in Malik. But either way, obviously, Matt LaFleur is going to try to design an offense that makes sense for him. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if it'll come out in preseason, probably not, but it'll be interesting to see if there's any kind of changes or tweaks to the offense for Tyrod Taylor, not only just compared to what we did with the ones, but just in general? Does this look like what we've been watching for the last several years with Rodgers and Love? Or does it look like this is a little bit of a tweaked offense to play to his strengths? Specifically, is it kind of a Malik offense? I wouldn't think so, but that would be kind of an interesting thing to wonder about. I suppose sticking on that theme would be the QB3 battle. It does look as though Kyle McCord is pulling away with the battle. He's been the QB3. He's looked like a better quarterback. I think through training camp, it's probably been safe to say McCord has, been the 3 with Drones being 4. So there would need to be some kind of a real solid standout performance from Kyron Drones in order for there to be any kind of a movement. If McCord has a better day, especially going up against slightly better competition, against the 3s instead of the 4s or whatever, then I think we can probably pretty much put a pin in this thing. I mean, they may continue this battle throughout, but I think we kind of know who the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4 are. All right, let's take our first break here. We'll come back and rip through some of the rest of these. We'll be right back. All right, relatively minor one, but obviously, how does Jordan Love look? Honestly, this registers very, very low on the scale. He could have a bad day, and it wouldn't really move the needle all that much, but you still want to see your starting quarterback have a good day, so that's going to be something you're rooting for. A really, really big one. This one, if I put these in order, this could potentially be the winner for saving the best for last. And that is, how does Marshawn Lloyd look? Number 1, because there is a distinct possibility that he is our number 1 running back this season. We don't know what's going to happen with the legal situation going on with Josh Jacobs. So, we have to potentially be prepared for him being our top running back. All the reports have been fantastic as far as how he looks as a runner. But it would be nice to actually see a bunch of carries, like a bunch. And I don't know if they're going to give that to him because it seems like they're being very cautious with him. But I wouldn't mind seeing a really hefty amount of carries for him. And then kind of speaking in direct contradiction to that almost, is he needs to get out healthy, obviously. No, even if he's, okay at the end, I don't want to see him limping. I don't want to see him coming off. I don't want to see him getting up off the ground slow. He needs to pop up, spring up like nothing has ever bothered him. I don't care if he takes a hit directly to the head. He just keeps on rocking like nothing happened. So those are obviously the 2 big things. We need to see Marshawn Lloyd carry some. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a heavy load, but he's got to be able, week 1 or whatever, if we're saying that there's a chance he could end up being our starting guy at some point, okay, cool. Can you carry it 25 times? I mean, we can't baby him forever. At some point, we got to take the training wheels off and see if this guy can take a little bit of punishment. So, he needs to get at least 10 carries. I mean, there needs to be some double-digit carries for this guy to see how he manages that and how he looks. Hopefully the offensive line can hold up well enough for him to actually perform, and it's not just immediately hit as soon as he touches the ball, and now I can't assess anything because our offensive line is dog crap. Now, in addition to he looks good as a runner, because everything we've really heard about him is the real sharp cuts and the speed and all that, we got to remember, too, that if you're going to be a starting running back, there are other components. Number 1 is receiving. We have seen a little bit of that as far as the receiving side of things, or at least there have been some reports in camp. The other is blocking. So that'll be something to keep an eye on as well. Try to keep an eye on anyways during the game if you see him in the backfield on a passing play, is his ability to hold up as a blocker and his ability to play as a receiver. Now, remember, for all these guys, there's an asterisk next to them that I don't know they're going to be starting. That's Jordan Love, that is Marshawn Lloyd, and that's also for Jordan Morgan, who is next on the list. Now, it's almost the entire offensive line, but we'll take these one at a time, starting with Jordan Morgan. We don't know much. We don't know a whole lot. There is the kind of persistent rumor that he was the better tackle last year, but was kind of forced out of that spot. That doesn't tell us a ton, right? We're going off of small sample sizes and whatnot. I haven't heard a ton of notes about him in camp. I don't know if he's looked great, if he's looked mediocre, if he's looked terrible. I haven't really heard a lot of really good or really bad notes. I suppose not hearing nothing is good. because you're less likely to hear that was a good block than you are to hear sack given up by. So this would be a good opportunity to kind of see how he does. And remember, PFF is going to have their preseason grade, so I can't watch every player on every play, and neither can you. We'll all have our own takeaways, which I look forward to hearing on Packernet After Dark. Make sure when you see it, call it in, because I'm you're going to forget, I'm going to forget. But it'll be good to hear everybody's different observations of the game. But if you happen to think about it, keep an eye on Jordan Morgan. That's an important position. I mean, look. There are teams out there that can survive with interior and a really solid tackle duo, right? Minnesota did that for several years. Chicago kind of had that for like a year. A lot of teams have that. We've kind of had that at times, depending on what year we had as far as interior. If we have Zach Tom at right tackle and Morgan can be a really solid left tackle, we just need, give me baseline average for the interior, and I think we're going to be all right. That is a big component, because if he's bad, that causes so many problems. Not only do we have a bad left tackle, but we're starting from ground zero. Who's going over there? It ain't Belton. It's not Darian Kennard. So that becomes a massive problem. So that is probably the biggest and most important piece on this offensive line in terms of what we need to happen. Left guard, I have no expectation Aaron Banks is going to play, but there's still an interesting question of who is going to play. There is that Jacob Monk, Jagger Burton thing going on. So first of all, what is the starting offensive line? I guess we can just kind of talk about Monk and Burton and the competition between them as well as Belton. As I said, the way that they've kind of displayed this, it looks like it's over for Belton, but it's not to say maybe Belton doesn't come out at guard to start the day. We have no idea. But it'll be interesting to see who comes out at left guard, who comes out at right guard. So between Monk, Burton, and Belton, who plays where, how much do they play, and how do they play is going to kind of tell us a lot, I think. It's also kind of important to remember that right guard is really the only open position. Right tackle goes to Zach Tom, left guard presumably goes to Aaron Banks. There's a chance somebody can win that job, but I'm assuming that's not going to happen. So there's a part of me that thinks the guy that they like the most is the guy you put at right guard. At least from my perspective, that makes sense, because somebody has to win that job. And whoever's going to win that job, you want them to have as much opportunity to play in that role as possible, because that's going to be your starter week one. So again, if it's Belton, he needs to be there. If it's not, then we need to figure out who it is and put him there and get him used to being our right guard. And if the guard spots really are, for the most part, Burton and Monk, then again, I kind of think that perhaps the Belton experiment is done. That's not to say they might not kick him back in there with the twos possibly or whatever as he starts with the one, because I don't think Zach Tom's going to play. I mean, starts with the ones at right tackle because I don't think Zach Tom's going to play. But that would kind of be my expectation. So for me, it's a question of between Monk and Burton, who starts at left, who starts at right. And then is it the case that those two do start? And then as we move forward, Belton kicks back inside, or are they just completely done with that experiment? They want to give him as much time at right tackle as possible to see if he can be a legitimate backup right tackle. That's kind of where I'm at with that. And again, if Belton starts at right guard, that kind of throws everything into disarray. Now it's back to being kind of just a wide open competition. That, or maybe it really wasn't as much of a competition. It's still Belton's job, and they kind of just wanted to give the young guns, some opportunity, but they still think he's the guy, and now that it's a preseason, they want to kind of put him in that spot. You know what I mean? Like, so how they line up play one, I can't say definitively it's going to tell us a lot from a 100% standpoint, but I'm going to infer a lot regardless. Sean Ryan, I don't really have a lot of thoughts. Obviously, I hope he has a great day. The team, I think it's just one of those things, the team likes him more than I do. I don't really expect him to take a massive step. He's kind of been the same guy since day one, maybe a slightly better version of what he was, but he's still a very inconsistent player. And then again, I don't think Banks or Tom are going to play, or Zebach, whatever. As far as the backups outside of Monk and Burton, I think I'm relatively disinterested. I think the only guy really worth keeping an eye on would be John Williams. There's been a lot of talk about John Williams really taking a step. Remember, Williams didn't really play a lot last year. He was a 7th-round pick and was injured a lot last year, so we didn't really get a lot of opportunities. He's been talked about as looking solid out there, so when does he come in, where does he play, and how does he look? As far as Darian Kennard and Donovan Jennings and these guys, it's kind of run its course a little bit. And then there's also some UDFAs. I haven't heard a ton about them. I don't really have really high expectations for them making the team, but, who knows? As far as the overall offensive cohesion, I don't really, it's not that interesting because it's not going to be our starting offensive line. So like big picture offensive line questions, I'm not going to say I don't care how the offensive line performs, but I'm more interested in the individual performances and kind of how they start things out and how they shuffle the guys than how did the offensive line perform, because, our left guard isn't there. Our right guard probably isn't set. Our right tackle isn't there. That level of cohesion with the actual starting lineup, it's not there. At wide receiver, I would say at least 75% of my concern is Matthew Golden. I don't know who actually plays among the starters. Golden, probably one of them that won't, just because he's been dealing with injury. But if we just talk about all the starters in general, Golden would be the one that I care about the most. Again, he's been going through some stuff, so whether he plays, I don't know. Watson and Reed, don't really care. Please just don't play because I don't want you to get hurt. Beyond that, the biggest guy that I care about that should play a decent amount is Savion Williams. And Savion is not exactly in the same boat, but is in a similar boat as some of the other guys. Remember last year he had like the red contact jersey on and he was buried down the depth chart, and he was not really getting a lot of opportunities. This game he should get a ton of opportunities. And he is an important role player. There's a lot of talk about how Dontavian Wicks left and we don't have a number 4, blah, 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 blah. And I have been pretty steady on my support of Savion Williams. I really like Savion Williams. He's shown us nothing but positive things for all the reasons I've already laid out. I'm just excited for him to get a heavy workload in an actual game against, different competition, different looks, all that kind of stuff, even if it's relatively vanilla in the preseason. This isn't practice. This is, for all intents and purposes, the real deal. Not that he didn't play in the regular season last year, but whatever he did last year, it would be great for him to take several steps, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps forward this year. Because I genuinely believe in Savion. I'm not talking about number 1 wide receiver type of thing, but as a number 4, I'm a big fan. I think he can do a lot of cool stuff, not just gadget stuff. I think he's faster than people think. He's bigger and more physical. His after the catch stuff is stupid as far as like making people miss and whatnot, which is why was at least considered a big special teams option. And yes, he can do the gadget stuff as well, but probably not. The fastest way for the fan base to turn on Savion Williams would probably for Matt LaFleur to just give him a bunch of end arounds that go nowhere. That would be the quickest way for everyone to say, get Savion off the field, I'm sick of him. So if you want to pull one of those or something and maybe give 1 or 2 to Sky Moore and 1 or 2 to Bo Melton, cool. Go ahead and play your game, Matt LaFleur. I know you love those things. But I don't want the fan base to hate Savion Williams because he had 2 end arounds that went nowhere, and then he had 2 passes downfield, 1 caught, 1 dropped. Like, that is the worst possible day. Like, good Lord. Outside of injuries. But, once the injuries started cropping up at wide receiver, Savion started getting a heavy workload, and he freaking blew up. I mean, it was the Savion Williams show. And I've been saying since day one, I mean, I was upset with myself, kind of like with Jaden Reed, where I didn't really watch Jaden Reed, and then we drafted him, and I watched him, and I'm like, holy cow, I really like this guy. And I feel like I'm being biased, so I wish I would have been able to watch him and then say I like him so that it doesn't feel fake. But it's kind of the same thing with Savion. I remember watching him, and I couldn't quite get into Golden when I watched him, and I'd watched Golden plenty, obviously, because it was a very possible landing spot. But Savion, I don't know if I watched him and it just kind of slipped through the radar or what, or if I didn't watch him, but I remember watching him and just thinking, holy cow, I love this guy. And I think similar to Reed, it was very much if I had watched him, this would have been one of my favorite guys, and I didn't get to say that, and I feel upset about it. But I mean, I genuinely was watching, and I'm like, I don't know why this guy wasn't a much higher draft pick. I don't understand what he must be missing some fundamental football stuff, but good Lord. Outside of that, I mean, we got Sky Moore and Bo Melton. Sky Moore has an opportunity to prove he's more than just a kick returner. I think he's done a couple nice things, and as a potential 5 or 6, I'm guessing Melton would be more so the 5, but, again, as a 6, can you be sort of a gadgety / couple things down the field? I don't have super high expectations for a 6, you know what I mean? So you do a couple cool things, maybe have one flashy play where you break a couple tackles for a touchdown and we all get super jacked up. Call it a day, Maybe tack on a nice special teams return. Call it a day. You're done. That's all I needed. And Bo is in the Watson Reed category, not necessarily in terms of how good he is, but just in terms of I know what Bo is. I think we all kind of like Bo. I maybe don't like him as much as the rest of the fan base, but you gotta like Bo at least a little bit. And he's a legit weapon, I mean, his speed is for real. I think a lot of people forget that. I forget that he has legit game-breaking speed. Outside of being, a great team guy, and he's been in the offense now and in this team for a long time, so he's not just some like rookie UDFA. I mean, he knows his stuff. He knows the offense. He could be a real asset as presumably wide receiver 5. I'm guessing some big Bo fans would probably make him 4, but I don't think that's the case. All right, let's take a break and rip through a couple more of these. I got to find a new thing other than rip through, but that's what I say. We'll rip through a few more. We'll be right back. Well, I suppose we should do this. We could do this in a more organized way than I have, because I think there's enough notes for everything. I had a few more specific, but there's just a kind of a lot the more I think about this. So let's start with the interior defensive line. I think for me, it really comes down to where do these guys stack up? I mean, we know who the number 1 and 2 are, and I don't know if any of them are going to play. Maybe Wyatt a little bit. Hargrave hasn't really played up to this point. I'm guessing they wouldn't put him in there, but we'll see. Probably not even. To my recollection, and I haven't really gone back and looked at the snap counts as far as who has started and all that kind of stuff, and that would be maybe an interesting thing to look at. You can do that if you go over to packersgames.com and trying to pick through. I don't really have it organized in any kind of a way that it would be easy, but you'd have to kind of go maybe either player by player or game by game to see if you can find the starting lineup for the defense. Either way, you kind of assume McClellan is going to take a pretty high ranking here, but I don't know that he has been. Carl Brooks has been pretty high up. There's been a lot of Stackhouse, although, obviously that's positionally as a nose tackle, but it borderline feels like Brooks might be sort of that number 3, not including being a nose tackle. And I don't even know if McClellan is a nose tackle or if they're putting him at defensive end. I'm unsure. But who starts and kind of how they rotate that all out would be relatively interesting to me. Right now, as far as I can tell, it's been a really heavy rotation. There's been a decent amount of McClellan, tons of Brooks, tons of Stackhouse, a lot of Jonathan Ford. Anthony Campbell's been absolutely blowing the doors off of this. Warren Brinson's had some nice days. I think the last camp, there was a ton of Crumedy, which was just kind of out of nowhere. Every other play was Crumedy. That's a guy that's probably not going to make the team, maybe outside chance at a practice squad as a 2026 UDFA. But I think for me, more so, again, than just the general play, which is always important, but I'm just kind of curious where we're at as far as stacking these guys up, rotating these guys, where they play on the defensive line, when they play, and then, how much they play, and then how they play. There is an overarching question of run defense, which we could kind of talk about a little bit as far as, obviously linebackers, edge, defensive tackle, all that kind of rolls into one. I don't know. Some of the bigger question things I'm not going to look at as much. I know probably a lot of people, especially more the negative fans, expect, top tier performance from these guys, even when it's starters. But I just don't think that's necessarily what we're looking at this point. It's more, individual player assessments and all that kind of stuff, trying to determine how good their run defense is when they're not even running their normal defense and they're just kind of rotating people out in weird spots and asking them to do different things. And I mean, of course, I want the Packers to play well. I want them to win. I want all that stuff. It's just not really a high priority as far as like the team run defense. I mean, I guess it kind of overlaps in terms of, how I want the players to play as far as run defense. It does matter when somebody's running at you. I'd like you to make a play here. But schematically, in other words, I'm not going to crush our defensive coordinator because he can't do X, Y, and Z. I don't know what he's going to do. Now, I will say on that note, although I expect it to be relatively vanilla, as preseason usually is, they've been running a lot of exotic stuff. Do they dial that back because it's preseason and they're going to try to take it easy? Or is it kind of this is our defense, this is what we do, and we're actually going to get a chance to see what we've been hearing? And I kind of hope so, because we haven't really seen a Packers defense play that way. We haven't seen a Packers defense play as though they're the Minnesota Vikings with just constant, you got corner blitzes, linebacker blitzes. The linebackers are mugging up. You got, 6, 7, 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, and then, you don't know who's going to drop, and safeties are blitzing, and everybody's just coming off the edge or coming up the middle, or stunts and twists, and just all kinds of absolute madness. I would just like to see it because it would be fun. And if it's what we're going to do, then we should practice it. But it'll be interesting to see if we kind of, like we did on Family Night, if they kind of get a little bit more vanilla, maybe because it's on TV now, they're like, let's back off that and just run a little bit more base defense or some basic nickel defense and, cover 2 type stuff. That in and of itself will be interesting. Moving over to the edge, this one is a little bit more about performance than about where do guys line up. Kind of seems like we know who the number 1, aside from Parsons, the number 1 being Van Ness. It seems like we know the number 2 is Barron Sorrell. There might be an interesting question about who's after that. I would assume it's Dennis Sutton and Brenton Cox, but there's also Colin Oliver. Where does he fit into this? And kind of how do they use him would also be interesting. Is he just going to line up like anybody else? Do they try to get creative with him, and how does he look? But there is a component of, now that we know this is a little bit more established number 1 than the defensive line, where it's like, I'm not really sure who's playing where, when, how. We know who the number 1, the number 2, probably the 3 and 4, and even 5 being Colin Oliver, I would assume. Knowing that Mike is not going to play, I would like to see some good performances from our pass rushers. Again, I know you're probably not getting help from your defensive coordinator to try to scheme up some stuff, but fine, you're not getting schemed, so go win. Just go beat somebody. I think we need to see it from Van Ness because it's just that time. There's no more time for you. Again, you had a good year last year, good start to camp this year. Let's continue that. Let's see a big day from him. More interesting potentially is what the heck is going on with Barron Sorrell. Kind of out of nowhere, you're getting all these really positive reports. Again, nobody has challenged him for that number 2 spot. If we want to get super crazy with the conspiracy theories, we could technically say we don't know that he's not the number 1 ahead of Lucas Van Ness. Now that's getting a little crazy, but I mean, they've just been the 1 and 2 lined up together all day. Who's to say, right? But he's looked very good. Run defense, pass rush, strong, fast, powerful. There's a part of me that really hopes that this guy turned a hard corner and it just hasn't really been noticed and it's about to be broadcast on television. And then, of course, I'm excited to see Sutton. I'm excited to see Colin Oliver get out there. Nyla Kelly, there's been quite a few reports about him. He's further down the depth chart. Maybe get an opportunity to hear how his name is actually pronounced. That would be nice. Not that I'm going to remember or start pronouncing it correctly. Always good to see Brenton Cox. I doubt we'll be able to get too much of a strong assessment on any one player, but there is always that scheme change question where I wonder if one thing, 3-4 or 4-3 works better for certain guys. And I know, a lot of people like to say that's overblown, and it is to some degree, but I think we take that too far to pretend that it doesn't matter at all, which is not true. So I really felt the move to a 4-3 was going to help Van Ness and Brenton Cox the most. And we saw Van Ness explode, and I thought Brenton Cox played pretty well. And now we move back. So, again, are you guys okay? Is everything, we still good or what? Linebacker, I don't think I have a ton. Cooper can just sit down. I don't need him playing. Please don't get hurt. Be kind of neat to see Zaire Franklin. He seems like a cool guy. He's he's a prototypical middle linebacker. Not only just in terms of the fact that the way he plays, just kind of being a strong tackling machine type, but he has that sort of tough guy, leadership mentality kind of. It's just he embodies what it means to be a middle linebacker. Kind of that leader of the defense kind of attitude. So it'd be kind of cool to see him get a couple snaps. Again, we kind of know what we have from McDuffie. I like Hopper, so it'd be good to see him. I don't really, again, he's going to be Cooper's backup. That's all he's really going to be while he's here, I think. But, so I don't have a whole lot of vested interest outside of just, I like the guy and hope he has a good day. At corner, it should be pretty self-explanatory. It's the Cisse show. I'll be interested to see how long they put him out there. The funny thing is, my first thought is he's going to be out there quite a bit, right? He's a rookie. He's got to get as much experience as possible. You put him out there with the ones, you leave him out there with the twos. There isn't another possibility, and that is he's our number one. We got to protect him just like we would, Christian Watson or anybody else. So he goes out there and he comes off the field when Edgerrin Cooper and Lucas Van Ness come off the field. Now, if that happens, that is the ultimate ring the bell. This guy he's locked in. He's legit. Now, the middle ground is probably him and Keyshawn and Bullard and everybody come off at the same time. But again, number one, I want to see this kid play, and I hope it goes really well. Again, we can't read too much into it, so there's a chance he has a bad day. He gives up a pass. He gives up a touchdown, whatever. And everybody says, I thought he was good. It looks like he's overhyped. He's a bum, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. But you want these guys to have a good day, just like you want the Packers to win and all that. It's been a ton of great reports coming out of camp. You just want to see it translate against another team. And so I hope for him that he has a good day to help build up his confidence, because he's going to need that if he's going to help us in the regular season to get that feeling of, I think I can do this. But again, part two is going to be interesting how the Packers handle this. Does he get pulled early? Does he kind of just get pulled with the rest of the non-super premium guys, but the rest of the ones? Edgerrin plays a snap and they pull him. And then like Keyshawn and whatnot, they come off after, a drive or two. Or is he, he's a rookie, he needs more time, let's give him more time. I don't know, but it'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see where he lines up, because if Pittsburgh has their starters out there, are we throwing them on DK Metcalf right out of the gate? That's what I want to see. Snap one. Find DK Metcalf, see who's on the other side of him. Not that they, it's not always shadow coverage man-to-man or whatever, but it's still interesting to see. Safety, I don't have a lot of thoughts on. Just please stay healthy, or just don't play them at all would be fine. Oladapo, be nice to get some more opportunities to see him. I think safety is one of the interesting ones where, behind Oladapo, what do we have? There's as far as I'm concerned, a wide open competition. We brought in Trey Dean. And I think he's got, although he's absolute bottom of the barrel, I think he's got a legitimate shot to compete here. Same with Trey Fluellen, because the only other guys that are there are Mervyn Kenyon and Mark Perry. So, usually there's kind of this guy goes out, we'll bring this guy in, he'll be here for a week, and then he leaves and somebody else comes in. There's especially with a preseason game right here, you can put something on tape, maybe they bump you up a little bit. So safety is one of those forgotten, wide open, and I meant to the other day do the 53, and they ended up having a practice that I wasn't realizing they were going to have. Maybe tomorrow will be the podcast about the game. The day after that, though, there won't be a practice or anything to report on, so maybe that would be a good day to kind of look at the 53. Although we should have PFF stuff by then. I don't know, whatever. And then special teams, it all comes down to, for the most part, Trey Smack. I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get, but he needs to make about every kick that he gets. Again, I'm hoping for, depending on how far the kicks are, obviously if it's a bunch of 50-yarders, it's not exactly the same. But generally speaking, I'm hoping for about a 90% conversion rate. And so considering he's probably not going to get 10 cracks at this, you're kind of looking for a perfect game, right? I mean, look, we know he's got leg. I know he can kick from 60. That's not really as much of a concern. What we need is consistency. I need him to kick it a bunch of times from 20 to 45, and he needs to make all those. So that's going to be a big one for him. Obviously, he had a good family night, but then immediately after kind of fell short a little bit in terms of the percentage not being where we need it. Other special teams note, first of all, who our long snapper is, I don't even know. Cal Adamitis ended up getting hurt. I think he's okay, but that's going to be a question. Otherwise, though, the return game. I hope it's Sky Moore. I hope we get a good chance to see him. I hope he gets several opportunities, and I hope he looks good so we can just put this thing to bed and not even have to worry about it. Otherwise, we're going to have to look at Savion Williams and Will Shepard and, some other running backs like Strong or something to see what they can do. I don't know. And then I think the final note that I'll put on here is who on here can really change my mind? And that would be kind of a fun question of who's going, who's that one guy that's going to change minds. But somebody is going to leave here with either a very good or a very bad note that's going to change our opinion of them. And obviously we hope it's a good one, but that kind of is the final overarching question I have is who's going to really change our mind one direction or another. Who, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be about their play, I guess. You could argue, it could be like, they put McClellan out there right away and he plays really well. And then the comments about McClellan, it's like, oh, okay, so that dude's locked in. It could be Benjamin St. Juste just absolutely tearing it up, even with the twos where it's kind of like, you know what? I don't know exactly what the coaches are going to do with that information, but we got to have a talk. But anywho, I'm going to leave you with that again. Head over to patreon.com/pack_daddy. If you have any trouble getting over there, reach out to me and I will help you find it. It will be for paid patrons. Again, for as little as $1 a month, you can join in on that tier. Got a bunch of people on the free tier. Just go ahead and slot it in there. I looking forward to getting the crew back together. So I will see you tonight for the game. And I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.